Okay. Well, I'll go ahead and get us started. Um, it's really great to see everybody here. The activity we're doing today, the top card lifestyle priority activity, is one that we don't get to cover in our 5-week positive discipline parenting from the heart sessions, but I think it's a really nice one to help you sort of have an understanding of some tendencies that we might have as adults that invite behaviors from others, our children, our coworkers, our employees, and such. So it's a good activity as a standalone, just to have some insight, and it's a great activity if you're involved in any of the other positive discipline. So just out of curiosity, I see a lot of familiar faces, but just how many people here attended our last 5-week session? Yeah, so I'm really happy to see you again. We had a great session. We had parents who were super involved and enthusiastic and gave a lot of input, and I always learn a lot about myself and my parenting from every time I do positive discipline. So it's not rocket science, but there are insights that you get, and there are tools that you learn from the process, and there's tools you learn from each other as people contribute and get involved. It's a very experiential program. So I always get a lot out of it, and the energy that people bring into the group particularly this last session, was really inspiring. Anybody who has already signed up for the next session that starts next Tuesday? Good. Okay, so at the end I'll show a QR if you're interested. We still have room in the class. It filled up very quickly last time around, and so we'll try to get everybody in this time. Okay, so today we're going to do the top card. We can't fit in the 5-week session, but I like to do it, so this is a nice way for those people who attended to sort of extend their learning, and people who are interested to get a little more out of it. My name is Sean Rollison. I'm the grade 5 counselor this year. Previous years I was 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And so this year, this has allowed me to do a lot more activities like this, having a lower caseload. So I'm happy to be able to present positive discipline. I miss my 3rd and 4th graders, but I'm really enjoying working with 5th graders, looking forward to going to camp with them this year. I've been a certified positive discipline associate since 2008, and like I said, I learn something new every year. And the positive discipline organization is worldwide. They used to have what they called think tanks, mostly in San Diego, California, and they had one in France a few years ago that I went to. Positive discipline has really taken off in China. And I think it's because the world's changing, and traditional values, we're modeling as parents horizontal relationships more and more, right? Not everywhere. And we're modeling that to our children, yet oftentimes we're using old-fashioned parenting techniques of vertical relationships, authoritarian techniques that we haven't modeled to them and don't work in our current work environment either, right? And so I think that's why there's a lot of interest in it. There was a presentation, conference, I think Luna, you went to the conference in Abu Dhabi. Yeah, so there were some positive discipline presenters there, the Parenting Unconference. I also have a certificate in Adlerian Studies from a few years ago, a while back I guess now, from Bob Powers and Jane Griffith, who taught Adlerian psychology. There are graduate programs around the world and such, but it's been around for a long time, and if you study it, you start to see how it sort of germinated into other fields of psychology like cognitive behavioral therapy and things like that. But I find it very helpful and insightful. Here are some of the founders. I just thought this would be a good opportunity because we don't get to talk about it too much in the positive discipline class. So these ideas were sort of founded by Alfred Adler. He was around the turn of the century, and his follower Rudolf Dreikurs, and they were part of the Vienna Circle with Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung, but Adler's ideas really diverted from those of Freud. And for various reasons, the Freudian ideas sort of took root. He saw the importance, I'll talk about in a minute, the importance of horizontal relationships and equality in society. So during Freudian times, those Victorian era, for example, a lot of women were presenting with somatic issues, and Freud had certain ideas about why that was. Adler said, no, it's really about women are second-class citizens in that society, and for that reason, they present with more psychological and health issues. And we know that about any group who have minority status, who have inequality, that they tend to have more mental health issues and they tend to have more health issues. So these were ideas that he was thinking about way back at the turn of the from 19th to 20th century. So Rudolf Dreikar was his follower. Jane Nelson came along in the 80s and was studying Adlerian psychology, and she kind of made it user-friendly. And so the books that we're working out of is this one. I highly recommend it. Positive Discipline in the Classroom. And this one, it has kind of a corny title, so for a long time I didn't pick it up. This is called Do It Yourself Therapy by Lynn Lott, who you see there. So they were kind of the co-founders of Positive Discipline. I finally picked this up and read it and found it super helpful, like for myself personally. It's kind of self-helpy. I think the title Do It Yourself Therapy is a little, corny, but there's a lot, she applies a lot of the principles from Positive Discipline to you as an adult. Because Adler believed in horizontal relationships, these principles apply to our relationships with others, to our relationship with our kids, and things like that. So there's a lot of applications to it. All right, and so the activity we'll do today was an adaptation. It came from Bill and Mim Pugh, who were Adlerian psychologists, and Lynn Lott adapted it for Positive Discipline. Thank you, Faye. All right, so there's some of the books. I recommend starting with Positive Discipline. If you're really interested in how this applies to your life, the Do-It-Yourself Therapy has some great ideas in it. Some things that aren't covered in Positive Discipline, like early recollections, things like that. And there's one for preschoolers, one for teenagers. There's one for Christian families, for Muslim families. So there are people who have gone out there and done more with it, and they've been translated into other languages as well. All right. Oops, am I in frame? I forgot. Okay, just really quickly, because it's a very broad psychology, but just a few ideas, because we don't get to cover it in Positive Discipline, that Alfred Adler believed that behavior has a purpose. We're social beings, and we're seeking, the goal of our behavior is to find belonging and significance. And it's not always done in consciousness, but we're constantly making decisions about how we find belonging and significance as human beings, children and adults. Like I said, he believed in horizontal relationships, that we're all worthy of equal dignity and respect. So that's one of the foundational pieces of Positive Discipline, is that we have different roles, we have different sort of ways of having authority. So we talk about authoritative relationships versus authoritarian relationships, but we're all equally worthy of dignity and respect. And so this is one of my first German compound words that I learned, Gemeinschaftsgefühl. And so the idea is that when we thrive, when we have a strong sense of belonging and significance, of capability, of courage, of connectedness, we tend to do better psychologically. So I've been studying mindfulness, and they talk about this idea of sort of giving to others and how that improves our self-esteem. And that was, I can't remember if it was Dreikar or Adler who talked about, he had like this, I think he called it like his 20-day cure, where he said, people with depression, he said, you have to go out and do something kind for somebody every day. And one of his clients said, I don't think that doesn't make any sense. He goes, well, maybe you're right. Let's give it 40 days. So this idea of like being part of a community and contributing to a community helps us thrive. And when we have those horizontal relationships and we're treated with equality, we do better. So, all right. And in Positive Discipline, these are the criteria for effective discipline. So this gets covered more in the Positive Discipline, but I just want to touch on it. It helps children feel a sense of connection. is mutually respectful and encouraging. So we'll talk a bit about encouragement today. So in positive discipline, we talk about kind and firm at the same time. So one of my mantras is be the tree, be the tree. I've got a preschooler and I'm always saying to myself, be the tree, be the tree. And that means being kind and firm at the same time. So staying rooted, and there are a lot of tools that come from those concepts. All right, is it effective in the long term? Jane Nelson said, beware of what works. So things like punishment, rewards, and things like that can be effective in the short term, but does it have long-term results? And there have been studies about rewards, and they can be effective in the short term, but then when you remove the rewards, then the behaviors the target behaviors will drop after that. Does it teach important life skills? So skill building is super important. And does it invite children to discover how capable they are? Okay, so to sort of illustrate these ideas, we did this in the workshop, but I wanted to cover it again because I think it's a really helpful way to sort of understand it, and then we'll move on to top card. So remember, Adler said that we're social beings and we're seeking belonging and significance. So up here, I don't know if you can see that. It says significance and belonging. And it's like we have this goal in life, and it's not in consciousness always, but we're always moving in that direction. So if you imagine a child who's growing, and they're coming up, and they're moving in that direction of belonging and significance. So what kinds of things help children find that sense of belonging and significance? What are some ideas around that? Yeah.
Consistency?
Yeah, so when they have a consistent, predictable environment, that helps them thrive, right? What else?
Love.
Love. What else? Feeling connected to their family, to friends and community.
Validation.
Okay, so validation, knowing that their thoughts and feelings are important and valued, right? Being recognized, being seen. What else?
Being given responsibility.
Okay. Yeah, so that sense of capability. So going on a tangent here, but back in agrarian times in the US, children had responsibilities. You had to go out and help with the harvesting and collecting the eggs and things like that. You had the sense of capability and contribution. And when we moved into the industrial period, that's when this rise in what we call delinquency happened. Kids felt less useful. So when we look at some Aboriginal cultures, little children, preschoolers, are given, like within an hour, 3 tasks per hour. You know, in some societies are sent down to the market to little children to pick up. And I'm not advocating for that here in Dubai, but you know, so they have giving responsibilities, giving chores, giving activities, gives children a sense of belonging and significance. And what kinds of behaviors do we see as a result of that? Like kids who have that sense of belonging and significance. What types of behaviors do we see from kids?
They're secure.
Okay, so they feel secure, happy,
Cooperative.
engaged. Okay. All right. So Adler called this encouraged. Well, he called it courage. Sorry, I'll come back to that. Courage. That we have the courage to make mistakes, to learn from mistakes, to try new things, to contribute. So he called that courage. Okay. Sometimes, as we are developing, we encounter obstacles, and we kind of lose our way in finding belonging and significance. What kinds of things might get in a kid's way of having that sense of belonging and significance?
Self-doubt.
Okay. So I'm not going to put any leaves here, but self-doubt.
Ignored.
Okay. So not being seen, ignored.
Shame.
Okay, shame. Okay.
Validation.
What?
Invalidation.
Invalidation. Okay.
Not well heard.
So not well regarded. Okay. And then what kinds of behaviors do we see from kids who don't feel belonging and significance. Defiance, retreat, being aggressive, and things like that. So one of the things that Adler said is a misbehaving child is a discouraged child. So children feel discouraged, and as a result of feeling discouraged, we see misbehavior. So there's this idea that there's something under the surface that's going on that lead us to feeling discouraged. So I want to illustrate that because a lot of this is happening out of consciousness. Right, so let's take the example, this is an easy one, of a 4-year-old girl. She's doing great. She's in school. She has friends, helping out around the house. And then mama brings home a new baby. So we start with perceptions. One thing Adler said is we're great perceivers, but children aren't always skilled interpreters. So what are the observations that happen when the new baby comes home? What is the 4-year-old girl seeing? That would be an interpretation, right? Okay, so starting with a perception.
She doesn't have time for me.
So less time.
Baby's getting attention.
Baby's getting a lot of attention. Maybe people are bringing presents to the baby.
It's noisy.
It's noisy. I'm getting less sleep. Some of you might be able to relate to this. Right, and that leads to the interpretation. So we said kids are like, my kid, he's like sharp as, he picks up everything. But the interpretation can be faulty, and some of that's developmental, the brain is developing, and so they're unskilled as interpreters. So then we go to, I'm not loved, I'm not important, baby's more important than I am, right? Which leads to beliefs about self. So what types of beliefs might a child make who's an older sibling of a baby about them? How do they find belonging and significance? In order to find belonging and significance, what are some things that we see older siblings do?
I must behave like the baby.
So I must regress. So sometimes we see regression in children. I must be more aggressive. I must be perfect. I must be the little helper, right? So there's a variety. Like Adler really believed in the creativity of the human mind, that he marveled at the different ways that we strive towards belonging and significance. And then as a result, we make decisions. So it might be, I'm going to hurt the baby. It might be, I'm going to be super helpful. I'm going to be perfect, which then that sort of feeds into perceptions. So this is we would call this private logic, where it's not always in consciousness. And that's why I wanted to lead with this before we did Top Guard. And then this cycle is sort of this perpetuating cycle that we get into, he called lifestyle. And part of the goal of what he called individual psychology was to help people just have insight into that I have certain, it's based on a variety of things, like how you're viewed in society, family, atmosphere, gender, your own ideas about your physical limitations. There are many, many factors that lead to our perceptions of self and our private logic, and then that leads into lifestyle. So I'm going to move us right into the top card so we have time to do it. Any questions about that? Okay. So you are at home, and I'm adapting this for Dubai. The Airmax guy shows up at your door. We say UPS in the US. And he's got 4 parcels for you, 4 packages. Merry Christmas. You've got your little bow. How do I make a bow? Something like that? No, it goes like this. All right, Merry Christmas. Rejection and hassles. Meaningless stress and pain. Criticism and humiliation. Meaninglessness and unimportance. So raise your hand if you would be thrilled to have any one of these show up at your doorstep. rejection and hassle, stress and pain, criticism and humiliation, meaningless and unimportant. So we can all agree these are not things that we like to deal with. They're not pleasant things, okay? What I'd like you to do is, so then the Aramex guy says, all right. I can take one back, but I have to leave the other three. It's my job. So go with your gut. If you were going to pick one, which one of these would you just say, okay, that's the one I'm going to send back. That's the one I really, really don't want to deal with.
Are these what we're feeling or what the child is
What, this is all about us, so yeah.
You want us to just shout it out?
Actually, no, think in your head and then find a 3x5 card and put a number 1 and just write down which one you would send back first. What's that? You're just doing one. Pick the one that if the Aramex guy said, I can take one back, your least favorite one that you would want to get rid of. You guys need, all right. All right, everybody have their number 1? All right, so you're at home and you're unhappy, but you're like, I'm so glad that I don't have such and such. And 10 minutes later, did everybody get a chance to write theirs down, their number 1? Okay. The Aramex guy comes back and says, okay, my boss said I can take one more. So what would be your number, put a number 2, and what would be that one? Everybody got it? All right. So this is your top card. Now, one thing that Adler didn't like to, and in positive discipline, we don't like to label. Okay, label is constrictive. It puts people in boxes, but we do like to help give insight and find ways to liberate people from certain patterns of behavior. So just that's something important to remember. Okay, so let's see here. This would be comfort. This would be pleasing. Control. I have handouts for this, but I wanted to lead us into this first. And this would be superiority. Okay? So what that means is that as we develop those sort of lifestyle tendencies and we're striving towards belonging and significance, we develop lifestyle patterns and priorities. And they're the things that make us feel less comfortable with our belonging and significance, we tend to avoid them, and we develop patterns around doing that. So, and the number 1 is your top card. And I don't play poker, so I've never really understood what top card means. So I'm giving a presentation on top card, but I can't really describe what it means except from a psychological standpoint, but it's a poker term. And your top card is the one that you play, the number 1. That's your priority. When you feel threatened or under stress, that's the card that we play. Okay, so that's when we tend to invite mischief and misbehavior and baffle the people around us. And create sort of social issues. So we become more rigid. We're in that guard dog brain, the amygdala. And so it's the only if. I only belong and have significance if I am in control of the situation because I feel under threat. I only feel I belong and significance if I sort of take the high road. I'm going to be the superior one in this situation with my knowledge or my skills. Or I only belong and have significance when I am avoiding situations that make me feel uncomfortable. Or I only belong and feel significance when I'm pleasing and making other people happy. Okay? The second one is what we call method of method of operation. So that just means in our daily life, when we're not stressed out, we have a tendency to be, to sort of be in this mode of operation. So I'll tell you mine. My top card is superiority. So when I feel threatened or when I'm under stress, I start busting out like, big words, or theory or something like that. And I might sort of do other things that create mischief with the people around me and invite certain behaviors from people as a result of me behaving that way. And then in my operating mode is more pleasing. So sometimes I do things and my coworkers are, why are you doing that? I'm like, well, I don't know, somebody asked me to do it, right? And so it can be more insidious, but it's more sort of a rational way that we get through life in general. So, okay, I'm gonna move us on to our activity. Any questions about that? All right. So I'm gonna have you break into groups according to your number one top card. All right, and we'll take about 10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. And so if your top card is comfort, I'll just assign you a table. List your assets. What are some positives about being a comfort top card? And what are some things that you invite from others, either positive or negative? I know some people who I sort of presume have comfort top cards, and there are certain things that they invite from me that are very positive. What are the liabilities of having a comfort top card? And what would be some areas of improvement, okay? The last one is a bumper sticker, and I was realizing last night, like, I don't really see bumper stickers in Dubai, but does everybody kind of get the idea of it'd be like your motto, like just a fun motto, because we want to be able to be gentle with ourselves and have a sense of humor about, oh, there I go again, I'm pulling out my superiority top card. So what would be a great motto for your group, like a pithy, funny statement about who you are as a group, right? Just to sort of be gentle with ourselves, have a sense of humor. Yeah, Luna.
Sorry, the first was top card, what was the other?
They call it method of operation. Yeah. So, all right. So, yes?
Which was that talk about, the first package we sent back?
The first one you sent back is your top card because it's the one you want to avoid the most. And so when we're most stressed out, if I'm stressed out, then I am very uncomfortable with feeling like I'm unimportant. So I'm going to pull out my superiority top card. I'm going to be like, well, you don't know what you're talking about. I might not be saying out loud, but I'm going to be playing that card in ways that are invite things from other people. There might be other assets to people who, I'll just give an example. People who have superiority top cards tend to be very philosophical. They have high senses of value, so they can step into leadership roles and things like that, right? What?
Type A.
Yeah. So yeah, and there are ways, for example, control too. Like there are ways people with control top cards can be super organized, right? So there are assets and liabilities. Okay, so let's move into groups. Are you guys ready? Whoever's ready. Come on up, take control of the situation. One or two presenters.
Yeah. I was gonna say our bumper sticker is, don't worry, I've got this. Or my way or the highway. Focusing one liability. We are very organized and we get things done, which is our biggest asset. There's a bunch of others on here, but you can read those. The ones that our liabilities that we're perfectionists and we're critical of others and ourselves. And because of that, we can invite aggression, dependency from others because we just get things done. And we have high expectations of everybody around us.
Any positives that you invite from others? Like focus.
Focus.
Yeah. I also. No, I also leadership that people, when you have control top cards, you often step into leadership roles and people look to you as authorities.
I think high expectations is a positive as well.
Yes. Yeah, to invite productivity from others as well, which is a good thing. Some of these things have to move along.
Yeah.
You want to step into the last one?
We would collectively, genuinely, all of us like to improve letting go, having more balance, and to trust others and delegate, kind of let go. That, I think. Because it is exhausting.
All right.
I think we forgot to add we get resentful, right? Because we're doing it all and then, you know.
Okay. All right. Oh, I forgot. I always forget this part. Here's your top card. Animal. Yeah.
I think I know which one it's going to be.
Eagle. Because they tend to be sort of distant, right? They're up high in the sky and they're distant, but they can be very fierce. All right, there you go.
Thank you.
All right, who would like to go next? Superiority. We try harder.
So we're superiority, and our bumper sticker would be passion and purpose because we feel like we always need a sense of belonging, and that's linked to what we do. Our assets would be we have integrity, knowledge, leadership. We're organized, a strong sense of purpose. We're often giving and helping. We're reliable and we're passionate. Our liabilities would be that we can be judgmental, arrogant. We can be stressed and triggered, especially maybe when others aren't doing. Maybe are we kind of like control?
There's overlap. Because remember, we avoid all of these, right? And so we tend to fall in certain areas. And you can have a look at the handout because you'll see that maybe this one didn't really fit for me. We do tend to have a static sort of here's my top card, but sometimes if one doesn't resonate for you, there might be another that you can explore. And as you read through that chart in column 3, you'll see, okay, maybe this one fits a little better. But there is overlap.
And we found that a lot of our group had superiority as our first, and then control as our second. We can be perfectionists, micromanagers, self-righteous, too analytical, often in fight mode and self-critical. We invite from others. Annoyance and frustration, so that obviously follows off. Dependency, motivation, distance, resistance. We can be the go-to person for people, and stability. We'd like to improve adding a growth mindset, some openness, resiliency, empathy, trusting others more, less thinking and more doing, letting go, more risk-taking and more tolerance.
All right. Who would like to go next? Oops, I forgot to give you guys. Here's the king of the jungle. All right. Okay, who would like to go next? All right, comfort.
Okay, so we are comfort. Our bumper sticker is we want to control without pressing the buttons. Our assets are because we don't want to press the buttons, we provide security, invite a comfortable environment, good listeners, good advice, and we tend not to overparent because we try not to fix the conflicts. Our liabilities are avoiding conflict. We might bottle feelings up for too long because we're avoiding the conflict, and we keep it to ourselves. Inaction, risk averse, too much control so that we don't create a situation of conflict, not being resilient, so not showing our kids resilience and being able to deal with pain. What we invite from others, very much actually, encourage others to be open and express, so to take action. What we would like to improve is more risk-taking, more communication, and to be more spontaneous.
Okay, and your bumper sticker?
We want to control without pressing the buttons.
Okay, all right, yeah, you did that all right. Okay, thank you. I like being around comfort top cards because they help me just relax. Yeah. They're the ones who say, why are you doing that? So without outing my wife, she's often like, why are you doing that? So, all right, let's give them a round of applause. Here you go, you get the turtle.
I thought we were going to get a teddy bear.
Okay. Come on, pleasing, make us happy.
So, first of all, a small disclaimer. The superiority table was so full when I wanted to join it that there was no room. But this is where I would naturally sit. So, Dana has been the inspiration for all of this. This is where I would like to be, but sadly, like Sean, I tend to, under stress, become the superior. Patronizing is the word that has been applied. Not a comfortable position. If any of you in the superiority table recognize people who call you patronizing, well, I get that a lot as well. So pleasing people, again, thank you to Dana for all this. Tend to be very mindful, very sensitive, show a lot of empathy, are always looking to see what they can do for others. So they're very generous. They're very other-focused, loving and flexible. This tends to mean that they're put upon a lot. People tend to rely on them. So as a liability for a pleasing person, they tend to be slightly in turmoil, thinking things through a lot, trying to make sure that whatever they do, whether it's a gift or whether it's an action, that they make it as good as they can. But again, we have a very small table, so I can only tell you what Dana's reaction to pleasing person.
And we're very grateful.
She will rely heavily on her faith to believe that she has done her best, and now it's up to the person who she's tried to help to take it as they see it. If they don't like the gift or they don't like the action, then it's up to her. It's up to them. So they can be a little bit of a pushover. People will rely on a pleasing person to always be there to try and constantly please. They're a bit too much of a perfectionist at times, and they sometimes bear a lot of feeling of guilt. What do they invite from others? Well, again, similar sort of thing. Reliance. People rely on pleasing people to be there to help them, but they get appreciation from pleasing people. But again, this idea that they may be taken advantage of is something that they almost invite from other people to use me, let me help you. And that's what a pleasing person is there for. So perhaps to be more direct, and as Sean said, give yourself permission not to be the pleasing person. Sometimes you can't please everybody, so just try and make sure that you enjoy a balance in your wish to please. And the bumper sticker is just stay calm and don't let anything really get too much for you. Dana, have I missed anything?
No, thank you so much.
And as a pleasing person, Dana didn't really want to come up and deliver.
Did anybody have pleasing as their, oh yeah, thank you. Did anybody have pleasing as their method of operation? Okay, so yeah, so there's a lot of us out there, but sometimes when we go into that stress mode, we go into only if, I belong only if. And so it pushes us into these other ones. One thing I also realize about this particular concept is that sometimes we have a level of awareness, but sometimes it's sort of that private logic where we've learned to mitigate these already. So I know I step into superiority when I feel threatened. And so sometimes I'm already sort of like, okay, Sean, don't go there, or don't so I kind of coach myself through that, sort of habitually, because I've kind of learned that about myself over time, but I can still slip into it. So I think we kind of, as we gain awareness of ourselves, we kind of mitigate these things already. So, okay, any feedback, like what do you feel you learned from this activity, any takeaways? Yeah.
I have one question only. Some personalities, they have a combination of maybe 3 or 4, or 2 of them, or 2. One cannot stick to one trait only, like pleasing or controlling.
Right, yeah.
You can be a pleasing person at the same time a controlling person with a superiority character.
Yes, yeah.
Is this something weird, or you combine the whole thing together?
Well, the idea is like none of us like any of these things. So we tend to have, we all fall into moments of control. Like one of the things we talk about in the positive discipline workshop is we become controlling when we feel out of control. Okay, so when we're in chaotic situations with our kids, we tend to get more controlling in that situation because we feel out of control. We all want to feel meaningful and important. And so we all will step into situations where we will assert our superiority and such. So yes, these are all areas that where as we try to find belonging and significance, we're sort of navigating these things. The idea that the people who came up with this is that we tend to kind of fall into that's why they say priority. It's not that we don't do the others, it's just we have these priorities that we tend to fall into. So yeah, absolutely. I had a friend who's like super strong superiority, top card, to the point where it was just hard to be around him. It was a really strained friendship because everything, music, politics, everything was sort of like this, and I always felt like I was sort of being put down. And it really, one time I told him about top card. He says, well, doesn't everybody do that? I'm like, yeah, but you take it to another level, So bringing that into awareness is important. But yeah, we all try to avoid these in life. No, yeah. So.
The top part is what you are like when you're under stress.
Right.
And the second one is your day-to-day operation.
Yeah, sort of method of operation. Yeah.
Okay, and is it possible that in different phases of life you are more one and then more another, or is it just that's your?
Well, the idea, it's a self-awareness piece. The people who came up with this said we tend to sort of be static in this area, but I can see where, for example, if you're not a control top card, but your life feels out of control, you might go here, right? Because you're just trying to reestablish control, and it might invite reactions from people as a result. So I could see there might be times where you feel like I have to be in control, or I have to be pleasing because I'm not in a situation where I feel comfortable asserting myself.
Or with kids being more in the pleasing because of their age or lack of ability to be in control in certain situations. They don't know that they have that.
Right. Yeah, and it's formative, right? So,
Can we put kids in these yet, or are they still developing?
I think we don't talk about it as much with kids. We talk about more with ourselves as adults. I see some fifth graders who kind of they kind of fall into some of these, But again, in fact, we do. Sorry, I forgot. Sorry, Don. Pleasing. Here you go, the chameleon. I do a similar activity with kids, but we don't go here at all. It's just more about differences, how we're all different, because part of this activity is really just understanding that we all have different ways of approaching the world. And so with the kids, I just have them pick which animal do you relate to the best. And we don't label them or say that, oh, this means you're more pleasing. When they break into their groups, they just talk about why they picked their animal and I haven't picked what they like about the other animals. So it's more an activity about respecting differences and understanding that we have different personalities. And that's as far as we go with it. And it tends to fall along the same lines. We get a lot of lions and eagles and smaller groups of comfort and pleasing. But I also point out that because we have a lot of third culture, I think all our kids are third culture here, right? Meaning we're navigating different cultures and environments that we get good at code switching. So you go to grandma's house and they're from Lebanon. And so I know I behave a certain way. I might not be aware of it, but I behave a certain way around my grandparents. When I go to the US, this is how I behave, right? So there's that's another element where we might not have that as our operating method, but we kind of learn to do that because we operate in a multicultural environment. So, yeah.
Coming back to where Natalie asked, having a first child versus a second child versus a third child, do you not see a first child would have more superiority
Yeah.
versus a second child that would have more?
Maybe, because that is Adler was the first to talk about birth order, and if you read Positive Discipline, there's a whole chapter on birth order. There are so many factors to our personality. So birth order, I don't know that there's a lot of research that sort of backs up this idea, but there were tendencies, like firstborns tend to be leaders unless they sort of abdicate leadership, if they don't feel that sense of courage. Middle children like myself can be sort of mediators, or pleasers. So it can correspond to that. But he looked at a lot of different factors in life, such as gender, birth order, your status in society based on what your ethnicity is, and family environment, family dynamics, parenting styles, and things. All those things influence sort of our lifestyle. Yeah.
Asking this question again. So the number 2 choice that we chose is our daily operation. So when we're stressed, is that what we are like on a daily basis, or then we go back?
The stress one is your top card.
So we don't look at the stuff.
So the first one you pick, the first package, the one that you like the least, that's the one that we go to when we're stressed. Like, I don't like to feel like I'm meaningless and unimportant.
So the number 2 that we select as our daily operation is only when we're not stressed.
Yeah, and that we tend to be more adaptive because we're not stressed out. So we can be more rational in those situations. Yeah. I just want to show you, I realize I have a class to teach in about 5 minutes, so okay, right here, if you're interested. I believe it went out in the last ASD news. They forgot, we missed one. So if you're interested, these are the dates and the times. So, and it should be, I think the next ASD news that comes out should have it as well. So. E118 is the one downstairs. Thank you very much, everybody. Oh, have a look. Thank you. Have a look at your handout. That can be helpful to you as well. Thank you, everybody. And I look forward to those of you who are joining us on next Tuesday afternoon.